Hey, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. Before we get into today's show, I have a huge announcement, something I'm incredibly excited to share with you. This is something I have been working on for the last 2 years, and it is my new book, Eat for Energy, and it's being published with Hay House. This is actually my first big publisher deal, which I'm very excited about. And it's going to help me get the word out about my work and help a lot of people who are struggling with their energy levels in a really big way. And this book is called Eat for Energy: How to Beat Fatigue and Supercharge Your Mitochondria to Unlock All-Day Energy. And it's basically everything I know about the science of nutrition and everything my co-author Alex Leaf knows about the science of nutrition to optimize mitochondrial health and to pull on these different levers to increase your energy levels. Now, the very short version of what I'm going to tell you is go get this book because it's packed with a lot of information that is incredibly valuable and a lot of stuff you're just not going to find elsewhere. Now, I'll tell you a bit about what's in this book so that you know, beyond just me telling you to go get it because it's really valuable, what's actually in there, what are you going to learn? Now, first of all, I want to tell you, this is not a typical diet book in the sense that this is not, I'm not doing what most diet book authors do, which is try to say something to the effect of, you know, everybody's got it wrong. The real way, best way to eat, it's not low fat, it's not low carb, it's not paleo, it's not keto, it's not Mediterranean, it's not vegan, really it's blank. And then, you know, they're typically inserting some wacky extreme diet that's some specific diet that they're claiming is the best true, you know, right way to eat for optimal health or for kicking butt or whatever the claim is, or for weight loss or whatever it is for longevity. And if you're smart and you've been around the block and you have been paying attention to nutrition science, you know that almost all of this is nonsense. The reality is there's huge financial incentives for people to try to promote this kind of pitch, to promote, you know, their one diet discovery. They've discovered the truth about the best way to eat. And if that thing goes viral and tens or hundreds of millions of people adopt it, they can make millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars by promoting that kind of narrative. The problem is, if you're seeing people say stuff like that, you can pretty much guarantee that it's a bunch of cherry-picked, distorted, misrepresented nonsense. They are not accurately and honestly talking about the science of nutrition. Because the reality is, we don't have science to support those kinds of claims. We have lots and lots of evidence to support that eating whole foods is incredibly important and is the foundational principle of a healthy diet, getting rid of processed and refined foods. And we have lots of evidence to support that consuming plant foods, unrefined, unprocessed plant foods, particularly non-starchy plant foods, is supportive of disease prevention and longevity. Beyond that, lots of things are arguable. Lots of things like what's the best carb to fat ratio of your diet, how much protein should you eat. There's plenty of room for disagreement, and you know, someone can argue Mediterranean's the best approach or paleo's the best approach, or you know, what for a specific context, you know, in very overweight people, obese people, maybe keto's the best approach. You can make those kinds of arguments. All of that's very reasonable. But anyway, all of that said, what I'm doing in this book is I'm not trying to pitch you on everybody's got it wrong. Really, I'm the only person smart enough to figure out the one true best way to eat. What I'm doing instead, and what my co-author Alex and I are doing, is giving you a compilation of our combined 45 years of studying nutrition science and telling you about, here's everything we know as far as all these different nutrition strategies you can implement and you can pair with any particular dietary pattern that you are on and that you like, whether you're on paleo or whether you're vegan or whether you're keto or you're eating a Mediterranean diet or whatever. You can pair these, you can plug these nutrition strategies into that dietary pattern that you already have and get even better results in terms of especially your energy levels, your brain function, your mood. In other words, how joyful or depressed you are, how relaxed or anxious you are, what is your neurotransmitter balance. You can sleep deeper. You can learn nutrition strategies that are going to massively reduce your risk of dozens of different diseases and extend your lifespan. And we're going to take you through all of those different strategies and hacks that you can plug in, many of which, and there's dozens and dozens of these strategies in this book, many of which are very easy to do and don't require much effort at all. So a bit of an overview of the book. The intro and chapter 1 talk all about basically what's controlling human energy levels, and that centers heavily around the mitochondria. From there, we're going to talk about the different nutritional levers that you can pull to optimize your mitochondrial energy production. So mitochondria, by the way, are, of course, our cellular energy generators. I'm assuming you've listened to me talk on this podcast a bit, and you probably already know that. So chapter 1 is all about circadian rhythm optimization. So how do we optimize our circadian rhythm? We've got a central clock in the brain. We've got peripheral clocks throughout the body. The central clock in the brain is primarily responsive to light inputs. The peripheral clocks in all the other tissues of our bodies, our organs, our liver, our intestines, our hormone-producing glands, our muscles, our skin. All these peripheral clocks are largely dependent on nutrition inputs, and that relates very heavily not just to what you're eating, but when you're eating. So we're talking a lot about feeding and fasting windows. We're talking about how you can stack calories at certain times of day, and when you should be cutting off your eating, what you should be eating before bed. Lots and lots of strategies to synchronize your central clock with all of your peripheral clocks, and by doing so, you're going to optimize your circadian rhythm, which in turn impacts upon numerous neurotransmitters and hormones that are heavily impacting your overall metabolic health, your risk of lots of different diseases, your mood, your energy levels, your sleep quality, and so much more. Just to name a few, it's impacting hormones like testosterone and thyroid hormone and growth hormone, and how insulin resistant you are, or insulin sensitive you are, cortisol, melatonin, and more. It's impacting on neurotransmitters that like dopamine and serotonin and GABA that are affecting mood and motivation and ability to feel joy and ability to relax your brain and go to sleep at night. So we're talking about how to synchronize your circadian clocks and optimize your circadian clocks so that you're optimizing in turn all of these different neurotransmitters and hormones for high energy levels and disease prevention. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2, we get into optimizing body composition. This is a huge thing for many, many people. People are when we do studies based on looking at both body composition metrics and combined with biomarkers, roughly 80 to 90% of people are carrying excess body fat. And this is resulting in lots of different things: insulin resistance, chronic low-grade inflammation, oxidative stress that are hindering mitochondrial energy production. So the combination of excess body fat and too low of muscle mass are big contributors to fatigue. And we give you many, many different nutrition strategies, simple nutrition strategies, not extreme diets or anything like that, to optimize your body composition. And in chapter 3, we talk all about blood sugar dysregulation and how to optimize your blood sugar. This is a huge factor for many, many people. And both hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, and high blood sugar are major, major problems and major contributors to low energy levels and energy levels fluctuation in tandem with glycemic variability, meaning if you're fluctuating a lot from high blood sugar levels to low blood sugar levels, that's a major cause of what's controlling your energy levels and impacting them in a negative way. 1/3 of all adults have hypoglycemia, have low blood sugar 2 to 5 hours after eating. There's another chunk that have something called idiopathic postprandial syndrome, where they experience the symptoms of hypoglycemia, fatigue and jitters and shakiness, and maybe being faint or other symptoms like that, anxiety. but they don't necessarily have measurably low blood sugar. And we talk about that also in the book. We talk about chronic hyperglycemia, which is largely the result of insulin resistance driving up your blood sugar levels chronically, and that's causing chronic oxidative stress and damage to your mitochondria and causing them to shut down energy production. And we talk about the fact that even if you don't have diabetes or prediabetes, over 80% of adults in the United States are experiencing on a daily basis spikes of blood sugar levels that are entering into the pre-diabetic or diabetic ranges. And that is, again, a contributor to mitochondrial shutdown. So we give simple hacks. Many things are very, very easy to implement and can make a huge difference. For example, just changing not what is on your plate, but the order in which you eat what's on your plate can actually make a huge difference in your post-meal blood sugar levels. So we give you 2 strategies around that, as well as many other strategies to optimize your blood sugar levels, increase your insulin sensitivity, and basically get those blood sugar levels flattened out, stabilized, so you're not going high and low, or high or low all the time, and crushing your energy levels and your mitochondrial function as a result of that. Then there's a chapter on optimizing gut health. And we know, of course, there's a gut-brain axis, there's a gut mitochondria axis, and the impact of our gut health on our whole body, every organ system of the body, but especially our brain function and our mitochondrial function, our energy levels, is massive and cannot be understated. So how do we optimize our gut health? This is not something that involves very complex, systems and taking a million supplements to kill off lots of bacteria. We're really looking at what are simple tweaks that we can make to our diet to, for example, dramatically increase the amount of bifidobacteria in our intestines. That is going to, and how can we dramatically increase the amount of short chain fatty acid butyrate producing bacteria? And we know that those short chain fatty acids have a massive benefit to mitochondrial function and energy production. So how can we seal the barrier of our gut? Because we know that lots of people with chronic fatigue syndrome have chronic intestinal permeability, and that is a major factor wrecking many people's energy levels. So we give lots of simple nutritional strategies to address those issues. And then in the last chapter of that section of sort of part 1 of the book, it's optimizing brain health. Tons of good stuff there. How to optimize your neurotransmitters to decrease depression and anxiety, increase joy and relaxation, have better sleep quality, protect your long-term brain health, and how to manipulate some of these levers in the brain that are controlling energy levels as well. And then in part 2, there's a chapter, it's 2 chapters. One is on superfoods for energy production, and the second one is supplements, the top evidence-based supplements for energy production. And let me just tell you, that chapter alone is worth the price of admission. This is like an encyclopedia of all of the best supplements, not only to optimize your mitochondrial health, and that's a huge thing, and your energy levels, but supplements for optimizing neurotransmitter balance, supplements for optimizing sleep and gut health, and so much more. There's amazing information in there. And let me just tell you, it goes way beyond just saying, take some stimulants, take some caffeine, which is what you'll find mostly if you're looking up energy supplements online. If you're smart, you've heard me talk about this in the past, that using stimulants and caffeine is not a good approach. It's to trying to enhance your baseline energy levels. And in fact, it's counterproductive in the long term to try to use that approach. So how do we actually use supplements to build up our cellular energy production capacity? How do we build up our mitochondria so we're actually increasing our baseline energy levels over time? That's the goal, is not just to give you a temporary boost, but to actually build a body filled with cells that are constantly producing more energy than they are now. So that's an overview of the book. It is packed with amazing strategies. Again, that can be, it's not a specific diet, it's strategies that can be flexibly implemented on top of and with everything that you're already doing. So that's an overview of the book. Now, if you pre-order before it comes out on May 10th, we're giving away $300 worth, technically $294 worth of free courses on our site. This normally costs $294 on our site. If you pre-order the book, we're giving it to you as a gift. We're giving you the Eat for Energy course and the Sleep and Circadian Rhythm Optimization course for free. All you got to do is go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or whatever favorite online bookstore you want, buy the book, and then send us an email. You can email ari@theenergyblueprint.com with your receipt, and we will set you up with those free courses, free gifts as a thank you. As if the information in the book is not enough. You're going to get amazing value and learn so much and learn so many incredible strategies, easy strategies to massively increase your energy levels, dramatically reduce your risk of dozens of diseases, optimize neurochemical balance and hormone balance to have better mood, more motivation, focus, cognitive performance, better libido, and better sleep, and so much more. So go grab the book, Amazon, wherever you want. Email the receipt to ari@theenergyblueprint.com, and we will hook you up with $294 worth of courses for free as a thank you. And enjoy the book and implement the strategies and get tons of benefits in your life, and then go write a review for us on Amazon telling everybody about how much the book has benefited your life. So go grab the book. It comes out on May 10th, and help spread the word. Tell all your family and friends about this book and how they can improve the quality of their life, their mood and their energy levels and their sleep and their longevity, their lifespan, and much, much more as a result of reading this book. So go get it. Eat for Energy: How to Beat Fatigue and Supercharge Your Mitochondria and Unlock All-Day Energy. Go grab it on Amazon. And now let's get into today's show. Hey there, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. With me today is Marjory Wildcraft, founder of the Grow Network, author of The Grow System, an essential guide for modern self-sufficiency from growing food to making medicine, published by Penguin Random House, featured by National Geographic as an expert in off-grid living, hosted Mother Earth News Online Homesteading Summit, selected by Authority Magazine as a woman leader in wellness, focus of award-winning Reuters Sustainability Media Contest, nationwide PBS campaign teaching people to grow half of their own food in their backyards, and on the cover of Masters of Health magazine for Earth Day. That's quite a list, Marjory. Welcome to the show.
I know. Thank you, Ari. I've just been doing this a lot of years, and I guess it accumulates. I'd like to know her.
Absolutely. And I know you've been doing it for many years because I've been following your work for many years. I'm a big fan, and this is a long time in the making. I've been meaning to reach out to you for the longest time, and I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah, yes, it's been a long time. And I really appreciate it. We were just chatting beforehand about the breath work and then the energy blueprint, and really good foundational materials. So appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate it. So your background, your sort of formal educational background is in engineering and then finance. How is it that you spent so many decades becoming an expert in growing your own food and off-grid living and backyard farming?
I know, right? It's totally crazy. My first degree in electrical engineering, I always wanted to live overseas. It was a dream of mine, and I was working with Motorola. I became an expat for several of their cellular telephone networks. I was the engineering manager for that, and having a great time, just young and single. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, Marjory, there's this guy named Robert who is teaching this class on money." And I said, "Great. What do we know about him?" Well, we don't know anything. I decided to go anyway. And wow, I was blown away. Like, this was so impactful. And it ultimately inspired me. Instead of working every day for money, I decided I wanted to learn how to have money make money. And I was using his systems. I ended up moving back to Austin, Texas, and creating a very, very successful business. In fact, it was so successful, Robert asked me if I would be a lead testimonial. And that's how for 4 years, I ended up on national television every day and night with Robert Kiyosaki for Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing great, tons of money coming in. I was volunteering. Oh, and this was so innocent. Like I never saw this coming, like, right? You never see the massive change, right? The semi truck kind of thing. I was volunteering on what seemed like an innocent project of getting locally grown food into the local elementary school. And it was the third meeting when the entire project failed. And my life, I mean, in an instant, my life changed. And what happened was, well, first of all, we were so excited. I mean, Steve, already he was already writing grants. There's tons of grant money for these kind of projects. Patty, I had already, the PTA and the principal, they were all down for this. And then Mike is he looks kind of like you. He's a researcher guy with this beard. He's always got this, and he has these wire rim glasses. And like, there are reams of study. I think it makes sense to you, but reams of study that the higher quality food kids eat, they score massively higher on intelligence tests, and they have way less behavioral problems. So like, we were all, this is going to happen. And then the eventful moment came when we went to, get a pencil and paper and put down the names of the farmers who would provide these vegetables. And that's when the whole thing failed, because I was living in Central Texas right next to Austin, and in all of Bastrop County, Texas has some big counties, there were not enough farmers to provide even part of the vegetables for one small rural elementary school. And I just, I don't know if you've ever had that, where your body just starts shaking involuntarily. I just started shaking because I knew there's only 4 days worth of food supply in the grocery stores. We're in Central Texas, surrounded by 20 million people, and that means 60 million meals a day that come in via a just-in-time trucking system. And if anything ever happened to that system, then it was just horrific. And I had just realized there is no food growing out in the countryside as a backup, right? Like kind of what's what all of us think when we are urban or suburban, or like, the country. There's nothing out there. And that I also realized there were scenarios where no amount of money would mean anything. And really, literally, I just couldn't, I had panic attacks. I had nightmares for the next years. And I just kept saying, farmers come from gardeners, and we have got to rebuild the entire food system from the ground up. And I sold the real estate business. I said, I cannot spend my life. And when you know something like that, that other stuff is meaningless. I'm like, I've got to learn this. And I have to say, it really cost me in a lot of ways, because I think like my sister-in-law really, one of my sisters-in-law really, she was like, Marjory, this is the United States of America. We are the most powerful nation on earth. Now, there may be supply chain issues in other countries. It's never going to happen here. And, empty shelves on the grocery stores, this is just never going to happen. And, like, people thought I was weird. My kids and I were no longer being invited to birthday parties and events and things, and somewhat ostracized. But I said, look, this is the truth. There is going to be some time this system has got vulnerabilities. I have to work on this project. And I did. And I spent years and years figuring out what's the fastest, easiest, funnest ways to grow food. How do you take somebody who knows absolutely nothing? Maybe they're older, out of shape. It might be a grid down situation. And how can you get them to where they're producing lots of food? And that really has been all of the work that I've done all these years. And it's really been a mission and purpose-driven life. I will say, on the upside of it, it has healed me on every level that you can be healed on the physical level, obviously from eating extremely high quality food. You cannot buy food that is high quality that I grow. On the mental and on emotional levels of just, I don't care if the grocery stores are closed. I don't care if China takes Taiwan or, uh, I know that I'm going to be able to provide for myself and my family. And then the mental, of course, you think better, you're clearer, you're sharper. And then spiritually, which we won't be able to get into in this podcast, but growing your own food, you are working directly with the forces of creation. That's you and creation producing things together. And I got to tell you, there are magical, amazing things that happen, and some of those stories are in the book I wrote about, which is more for inspire people. But I am so grateful for that night in Red Rock when the whole thing collapsed. So that's how I got into it.
Beautiful. Well, let me first say on a personal note, I'm very much on the same page as you. I have, if I turn my camera around, I could show you a little bit, but I have a few acres here in Costa Rica. And
Ooh,
I
nice.
have over 100 fruit trees on the property, and we harvest papayas and plantains and bananas pretty much every day. And we have enough of those that, God forbid, if needed, we could survive for quite a long period of time, eating nothing but fruit. And we'll get chicken soon, and then we'll have a good protein source and maybe some goats as well for the dairy.
Good.
And so I'm very much on the same page. Now,
Yeah.
having said that,
I just did an interview with I've been traveling a lot lately. It's such demand for me to be on podcasts and stuff. And I was with a Lyft driver who had just moved to the US from Venezuela. And I'm like, tell me what's it like there, right? Venezuela. And he told me this really heartbreaking story. He said his mom had a yard with 6 mango trees. And a couple of years ago, she had decided to cut 3 of those trees down to make a flower bed garden. And he said they were just heartbroken over that now, because the production from the 3 mango trees was partly what was keeping the family alive. Not only, they'd eat them and then they'd trade them and they'd dry them and store them, but that food source was hugely important. And they just so regretted cutting down the 3 trees. So, don't think it can't happen here. Yeah. So super good for you. I mean, right? Yeah, Costa Rica. Whoa.
So, having said that, I'm on the same page. There are many people listening to this. Hopefully, we haven't lost them yet, who might not understand the relevance of what we're talking about with two things I would like you to touch on: the relevance with human health. And like, why does it matter to grow your own food and have this connection with food production, from the perspective of being optimally healthy? And then the other one is, after you answer that, I want to talk about what's going on in the world right now and why this, and how you see things from your vantage point, with particular focus on the food supply. And how that then feeds into the work that you're doing.
All right. So first of all, your own health. In the longevity circles, for example, I used to do a homegrown food summit every year. Did that for quite a few years, where we just gathered all kinds of experts. And last year in 2021, our keynote speaker was Dave Asprey. And Dave, he's a character, but he is one of the leaders in popularizing longevity. And a lot of people were like, well, Marjory, why do you have Dave Asprey as the keynote speaker on a homegrown food summit? Like, that doesn't connect. And I'm like, yes, it does. Because pretty much almost every centenarian interviewed either grew their own food or had access to homegrown food for almost all of their life. And Dave himself, even though he has, he's got all the nanotechnology and the NAD injections and it's their telomere extension technology and the cryogenic. I think he's got every crazy gadget you can imagine, right? And the latest neuroscience and all this stuff. Dave himself has, I think it's a 12 or 15 acre homestead where he grows his own food, and that is the foundation for good health. You go in the grocery store, we used to say, well, be a perimeter shopper. Well, there's nothing in the perimeter, honestly. Stanford had a research, and definitely I don't want to discourage buying organics, because when you buy organic, you're reducing your toxic load. But organics have been shown to not really contain that much more nutrition than conventionally grown foods. Also, that's partly because, you know, the USDA, once the USDA made it, then the big farms usurped the organic brand, and you don't really know what you're getting anymore unless you're buying directly from a local farmer. There's a wonderful chart. I've got it in the Grow book, but it's also widely available on the internet, put together by August Dunning, that shows over the decades the amount of nutrition in the food supply absolutely declining to where it's almost nothing now. And then the amount of disease, the modern diseases, heart attack, diabetes, all the stuff, absolutely skyrocketing. And it's really just a huge issue of malnutrition. It's not in your food supply. So it really, if you are interested in health, aside from the fact that we're in a global situation where the supply chains are breaking, you need to be growing your own food. You just cannot get the nutrition any other way. And I use supplementation from time to time, but we all know that that's really not the answer. You need whole foods that are alive and living and vibrant. So that's the first part. And the second part of your question was, why now? Why is this relevant more than ever if you weren't going to do this for your health? By the way, my health is one of my top 5 values in life. And I think that everybody should be, because that ultimately is your best source of wealth, is your health, right? Doesn't matter how many billions of dollars you are, you've got to have an IV on your arm and be dragging that around, or an oxygen tank, right? Your health is way more important than anything else. But of the top 10 food producing countries in the world, and that would be like China, the United States, India, Russia, Brazil, all the way down to like number 10, I think, is Germany. Only 2 of those countries are net exporters of food, and that's the United States and Germany. Last year, in 2021, China bought up half of the entire world's grain supply. And that is up from, say, 2019. They used to buy about 10% of the world's grain output. Last year, they bought half of it. They are stockpiling grain like you won't believe. And if you've heard about the shipping container shortage, and the price of shipping containers has gone up, 5 times, it's because when you buy half of the world's grain supply, where do you store it? They don't have that many silos. So they're just keeping it in the containers that they got it from and stacking those up in all kinds of places. Of course, and their ports are now completely clogged up because they got ships full of grain, right? And so if you're wondering why we have a supply chain crisis, a part of it is because China has just bought up half of the world's grain supply. In the United States, we haven't had any problems yet. We are a net exporter of food. I would not call it food. It's GMO stuff. But India, even middle-class Indians are lining up at food banks. Brazil is deeply, deeply concerned about famine. They're starting to have food riots. All of the major countries are just, global production has been down for several years, and we're having crazy weather. I know most of us don't think about agricultural global production, but it's when everything is gone on the planet and every country starts hoarding it, it becomes a problem. There's also export controls. Even before the Russian-Ukraine thing, I think Russia and Ukraine provide a huge amount of wheat. That's all shut down. Vietnam has shut down exports of rice. Although all these different countries have shut down exports because they're saying, we got to hold this for our own people. So it is really bad out there, and you've seen it already. I mean, you've already seen prices going up. Meat has gone up incredibly, vegetables, grains, everything. And there's no like getting back to normal in this one. I don't think, I haven't seen anybody talking about that. All they're talking about is like, can we slow down the breaking of this supply chain crisis? So we're in a world of hurt. The good news is you have time to prepare. And as I said, this was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life when I woke up to the potential for this scenario. Often a great crisis is the biggest gift we can get. So, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of Bill Gates buying up, I think becoming the largest owner of farmland in the United
Mm-hmm.
States, or maybe in the
Mm-hmm.
world, but at least in the United States? What is going on there? What do you think is going through his head strategically, or as far as positioning himself financially? And how do you think, given his alignment with big agriculture, Monsanto and GMO and these kinds of things, what do you think the impact of that will be going forward for the average American or for the world more broadly?
Yeah, well, first off, it's just an excellent investment, right? Farmland with water is an excellent investment, especially in a time like what we're facing with the collapse of the systems. Um, I mean, really, anybody listening, if you can buy even an acre that has good soil and water, that is something that will survive this inflationary and ultimately hyperinflationary and collapse of the US dollar process that we are already ankle deep into. So I can't, I mean, what do you do when you're a billionaire? I mean, that is definitely just a solid investment. Bill Gates, he's a big guy. He likes to run the world. And, there's a saying, control the food and you control the people.
Hmm.
So I don't know how much of that, and that's been going on for centuries. I mean, that's like, the Romans, give them bread and games and they'll never revolt. And that's knowledge that has been around. So I don't know how much of that plays into what he's thinking. I've seen I would not trust the food that he grows. I've seen some studies, I don't know their accuracy, but they look legitimate to me, where they're actually talking about being able to put vaccines into like lettuce or spinach that's
Right.
growing. And I'm like, I don't want nothing to do with that. I don't know. I don't honestly know. I don't have not enough of bio
Yeah, it's
researcher
not,
to,
I mean,
to validate that. But I'm like, oh my God, that's just really dangerous.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know if it's the right terminology to say they're putting vaccines in it, because that makes people think they're putting like syringes in there, but they're genetically modifying the food to have mRNA that basically can act like a vaccine, and that's in your food now. And I definitely agree with your skepticism and
Yeah.
general feeling like that's probably not going to end well when you start tinkering with food in that way. I mean, food is information. Our body gets signals for certain biochemical processes in response to the foods we're eating, and when we start tinkering with it and adding different signaling molecules in there, I don't know. I mean, I don't think we understand things well enough for us to sort of play God in that way.
Look what we've done with GMOs. I get it. They're trying to feed the world, but that's really, in my opinion, a huge disaster, right? I do everything I can to avoid anything that's genetically modified. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very deeply concerned about what they're doing there. And more than ever, that's impetus to have control over your own food supply. But I really love to harp on or expand on what not harp, expand on what you were saying about the relationship. And I think that's one of the most wonderful things for me in growing my own food is the relationships. I can give you one example. So I was in Colorado for a couple of years. I love to live in different bioregions, to grow in different bioregions and explore the differences. What does it take? Like where you're in the tropics, very different from living up in the high desert in Colorado with a very short growing season, right?
Is that where you are
So
now in Colorado?
no, I've moved. I was there a couple of years and now I'm in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay. Nice.
But I moved there and I love to grow and honestly, people think, oh my God, you got to have acres. Not at all true. 100 square foot of garden bed space is really plenty of room for one person for all the produce that you'll need. And I
Mhm.
like to do it in two 50 square foot beds. And I had built these 250 square foot beds that are, they're like 2 cinder blocks deep, and we filled it with good soil. And then Lynn Gillespie is the region's, like, hands down, the region's expert. Like, she's been growing this way for 35 years. I mean, she knows everything. So Lynn and I decided we took my yard and went from complete yard, which was grass, turned it into 2 raised beds, and then grew. And every week we filmed something. So it's a 33-week project, which actually, when you sign up for the webinar that you're going to talk about there, you'll get free access to this. And we grew in these garden beds. So I had Lynn's system, I had Lynn's guidance, I had her soil. And then Lynn also has a small CSA. Like, once you get good at growing food is like printing your own money. So this is really a skill that could be a huge survival possibility for you in the future. But so she has a small CSA, and I had subscribed to her CSA. I don't know, partly because I don't know, I was wanting to support her, but then because I was also growing my own. But basically, I had her vegetables from the CSA, and then I had my vegetables in my garden. And in my garden, I mean, there's nothing more enjoyable than going out there and watering and a little bit of weeding and just being with the plants and connecting with them and, interacting with them. And I swear that my broccoli that I grew, that I had tended, tasted so much better than Lynn's broccoli that she had grown for the CSA. And exact same soil, exact same condition. I mean, she only lived about a mile from me. Everything the same. Seeds, I mean, I was using her seed starts, but my broccoli tasted better. And I knew it was because of that relationship that I had. And I've seen that over and over. It really does get mystical. In the book, I have this really wonderful story. We can't go into it here, about a relationship that I had with Buddy the rooster. And it really is something I think we all are hungering at, the most fundamental level. And it's so simple. I mean, like, okay, so grow some food and you will find this nurturing and this connection that you have been missing all your life. And it's so rewarding when you connect into that.
There's so many beautiful reasons to start doing this, from your own health to the spiritual connection of sort of communicate, sort of connecting with the earth and with the creation of food, for financial reasons, as you said, like printing your own money, the supply chain crisis. There's so many layers to this and good reasons to do this, yet so few people are doing it. Going back to kind of the supply chain crisis aspect of this, there's a lot of people talking about this. There's a lot of people who are concerned with the breakdown of the supply chain. When COVID started, people went to the grocery stores and started buying up toilet paper like crazy. I still, for the life of me, can't understand why people bought. I mean, I've traveled to a lot of third world countries where they don't even have toilet paper. They never have had toilet paper, and they use a little bit of water and their hand, and, and I think, if you've got a shower and you've got rags, you can do the laundry. It's obviously not ideal as flushing toilet paper down the toilet. But anyway, it's amazing to me that so many people chose, in the event of, panic, they're like, I got to buy up all the toilet paper. Like, no, food is what you want. So given what's going on in the world right now, there are some people promoting an idea that, you should stock up on food. You should, you should buy these little survival buckets that give you, 5 days or 7 days of food and things like that. What do you think of that kind of mindset, and how does it compare to what you're advocating?
I absolutely advocate buying backup food right now, especially. If you remember, a part of my life was all about money and making money. And this is also widely available. I was overlaying charts of the M1 money supply, which is published by the Fed, which is the Federal Reserve, over money supply charts from Weimar Germany, which is one of the most interesting experiences of hyperinflation and collapse that we have. That's happened many, many times, by the way. So I just use that one because those charts were widely available. We are in lockstep with that. And I will make a very bold prediction that by this summer, it will be abundantly apparent to everybody that inflation is spiraling out of control and getting higher and higher. The really good news is you have a window right now to do what you need to do before the prices get completely out of control. Last month, the inflation rate was at 7.9%. Inflation is increasing every month. It's completely out of control. The quarter point or half point interest rates that the Fed is doing is not going to even begin to mitigate this issue. And I'm a huge advocate of buy as much backup food supply as you can right now. I would say 5 days is not enough. I would say you want to look at least a year and maybe more. And start learning to grow food, because this is a long-term thing. This is not going to be over in a year or two. This is not going to be over in 4 or 5 years. This is going to take a long time to work out. You don't just rebuild supply chains overnight. And you know, to go into backup food supplies, the best thing to do is buy foods that you normally eat. Now, I don't normally eat much food that's very storable. Like I don't eat a lot of grains or a lot of beans. So for me, it's a little, you know, like I depend on having systems for live living foods that I eat. That's, you know, more, protein and fat and vegetable oriented. But I still have a whole bunch of beans and rice and grains, because for me, it's a worst case scenario thing. Yeah, my body probably could do that if there's absolutely nothing. But more importantly is maybe I can trade a couple of pounds of beans for some fresh fish or for egg or whatever else that I might need or want. So you need to think of it, mostly Americans for the past 40, 50 years, the calorie has been a bad word, right? The calorie is about to be a unit of currency. It is about to be how everything is determined. I've done a lot of collapse interviews with survivors of collapse. I've traveled to Cuba to interview people that survived through that, and read a lot of historical accounts. And while, yeah, it's super important to have, I don't have my handgun with me here in Puerto Rico. It's not that good. I'm used to living in Texas or Colorado. Everybody's on. But I mean, to have some security, it's very good to have medical skills. But the number one thing that all collapse survivors talk about is not that. They talk about being hungry. So food is primary, and we've had an incredibly luxury life where we just didn't even have to worry about it. And that is changing.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say somebody who's listening to this, probably lots of people, but
hopefully,
yeah, many people listening to this are thinking, they have never thought about any of this stuff. They've never really considered the seriousness of supply chain collapse and the idea that their local grocery store that they've always bought food at might not have food. And they've never considered growing their own food, and they know nothing about it. And they're intimidated to start. How easy is it to start growing your own food? And how would you recommend someone get started initially?
Yeah, so I can completely, sympathize with that position, right? When I had that experience at the Red Rock Community Center, and I just like, oh my God, why me? I don't know anything about growing food. Like, why? Why me? Why? Because, if you see the problem, that's your job to fix it, right? There's some wonderful quote about that somewhere. I'm like, why? And I think that was the answer was, well, you're perfect. You don't know anything. You're going to have to figure this out, and you're completely freaked out. And that's going to be the situation, that millions of people will find themselves in at one point in time. So one thing is always stay in touch with that. You can do this. And it actually is fairly simple. You don't need to be super intimidated with it. Also know that you are supported, right? There are forces in the world that want to be that want you to be successful. And I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about the forces of creation. Getting started practically is very simple. I developed a three-part system, which are the easiest ways for people to get started. And the first is a small flock of chickens in your backyard. So 6 chickens, 6 laying hens. A laying hen will produce about 250 eggs in a year. I'm sorry, yes, in a year. And then 6 of them will produce about 1,500 eggs in a year. And that's, if you think about that, that's like 3 egg omelets for breakfast every morning, and then 33 dozen eggs to trade or give away or use in other ways. So that's a huge amount of wealth right there. Knowing that you've got at least one good solid meal is amazing. That chickens are like, I lived in Austin for many years, and they went from being banned by everybody to being, now they have a chicken coop tour every year, and it's totally embraced, and the city has how to keep chicken classes. And I mean, and I think I saw some articles a while ago in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's like those tech people, or in Seattle, they created these like I would like to live in some of these chicken coops, right? These guys have way too much money and sense, right? And I mean, so it's a thing that is widely acceptable. There's a lot of resources around. Get a small flock of chickens, and eggs are one of the most easiest way. You can actually get started in a few weeks. I mean, build the chicken coop in the run. That might take you a couple of weekends. If you got the resources, I've got the plans in the book. Just hire a carpenter and get them to do it. You can have that up in a very short period of time. You know, get your water. I would recommend buy your feed right in the beginning. Chicken feed is still cheap. It's chicken feed, right? Now, there are ways to produce 100% of your chicken feed for free, but don't do that in the beginning. You got so much else to learn. So, by the way, that we give a really funny video about that in the bundle that comes with the webinar sign up you'll be talking about. And just get, I mean, within just a couple of weeks, you can be producing eggs every day in your backyard. And that's wonderful, like just a couple of weeks. If the timing is right, start a garden. And again, most people think a big garden. No, you don't. You 250 square foot garden beds. I've grown in that for years. And that time in Colorado, like we only had one very short growing season. I knew grew way more than enough that I was freezing and canning, and it carried me all the way through the winter and into the next spring. It was hugely prolific, and you can do that. You got to be, you know, the timing's got to be right on when you do your garden, obviously. And then the third component, I recommend this last just because some people have a little bit harder time with it, but home rabbitry. The last time there was a big surge in home rabbitries was in the 1970s. And I don't know if anybody remembers the 1970s, but Nixon took us off the gold standard. We had stagflation where people were losing their jobs, massive unemployment, and yet interest rates were going up and up. My friends of mine at the time had houses with mortgages at like 18 or 20% per annum for a house mortgage. There were shootings going on at the Olympics. I mean, it was just a crazy decade, and there was a huge back to the land movement. And a home rabbitry with 1 buck and 3 breeding does will produce about 75 to 80 rabbits a year. And that turns out to be the protein requirements for a family of 4. They're very quiet, very small space. Again, you can get set up with them and producing within just a month or 2, 2 or 3 months at the most, and you've got babies kindling and a whole process going. And if you put those 3 components together, it really only takes up about the space of a 3 parking lots. So you can do this in almost any backyard. And it'll produce about half of the food that one person needs. And that's if you're a beginner. And as your skills and systems improve, you can produce more and more and more and more in that same space.
Beautiful. So as far as growing plants, do you have any recommendations on that? What are your thoughts on sprouts?
Oh, I love sprouts. Yeah. And we have a lot of apartment dwellers. So when you can't get, you don't have a garden, you definitely do what you can on your patio. Sprouts are amazing. Herbs in the windowsill are amazing. Cucumbers or tomatoes that are growing up vertical on trellises by whatever sunny window you have are amazing. We have a really wonderful thread going on at the Grow Network forums on tiny livestock you can grow in an apartment. And people are coming up with some really interesting ideas, like snails, which you and I are, maybe they're called escargots in France, right? Quail produce eggs and meat. They have a whole bunch of really interesting things for what you can do in an apartment. I also recommend, if you live in an apartment or condo, start a community garden. Actually, my situation here in Puerto Rico, I've only been here for 2 years now. Didn't know anybody when I came in. And I was living in, there's a lot of apartments and condos. I myself didn't have a garden plot. So for a while, I was what we call guerrilla gardening. So you just find a piece of public land that nobody's using and you just start gardening, right? And I did that. That was really fun. And I met some other guerrilla gardeners there. It was really great. And then I found a lot that the city owns, and I'm working with the city to create a community garden. And I want to give you the inspiration for this. So let's say you don't know anything about growing food, but you do have entrepreneurial and organizational skills. If you start a community garden, this garden, it's a 6-acre tract, and we're looking at putting about 380 plots in there. And just imagine what we're going to learn, what you'll learn in one growing season when you have 380 people that all have their individual plots, and they're all trying different stuff. They got different seeds, they get different techniques. Some of it's going to work, some of it's going to fail. Can you imagine what you're going to learn in one season? And then the friendships and the relationships that get created from that. Actually, I have to say, one of the reasons that this was inspired by this is definitely preparing for not preparing. I started training in martial arts, right? I think, boom, and I was just doing it for the fitness and then maybe for a little self-defense. And the thing that surprised me the most about it was every day, 3 times a week, I would go to the dojo and train with a group of people. We're all wearing these funky white outfits. So, and we don't know, she's an author, he's a policeman, he's a school teacher. We don't know what that is. We're all just there. We all love this sport and we're all learning, and everybody sees you making that stupid mistake and we help each other. And then when you really win and, when you really master a skill or something, everybody is like there to support you. And I was astonished at the friendships and the relationships that got built. I mean, I consider the people that I train with part of my family. Like I know them almost better than some of my own family. The same thing will happen in a community garden, because you're going to be going and tending your plot, every day or every other day. You're going to keep running into your neighbors that are doing the same thing. And you're going to be meeting and bonding and connecting with the best people in your community, because these are people that are not afraid of hard work. They're not afraid of getting their hands dirty, and they're producing something useful. That's food. And who better would you want to serve and be in relationship with? So I'm a huge fan of creating a community garden, especially if you don't have any other land or resources for yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. For everybody listening, I want to let you know, Marjory's going to be doing a webinar. We're going to have links to that on the URL for this podcast. It's going to be at theenergyblueprint.com/wildcraft, all one word, wildcraft. And this is all about how to grow your own food. So she's going to go in detail on how to do that, complete plan for producing all the food you need, and how to get started today, including some of the things she talked about as far as chickens and rabbits and garden beds and all of that good stuff. Marjory, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I would love it if you could wrap up by sort of giving people your top 3 takeaways that you want to leave people with for this point in time right now, given everything that's going on in the world. We just came out of, hopefully we're done with it, 2 years of the pandemic. And now we're seemingly on the brink of World War III and, runaway inflation and potential economic collapse coming. what are the three things that you want to leave people with?
Well, I would like to say you came here for a reason and for a purpose. You're here in this time, and I believe it's a privilege and an honor to be alive at this time. Now, you're absolutely right. It's crazy, it's chaotic, but I also believe at the end of this, we're going to create something that is really wonderful and incredible. And this is a great opportunity for humanity to really redo some things that have been fundamentally broken. So we need you to get through this and to live through this and to make those changes and to be here for a part of the rebuilding. And it really is, what we're talking about is an apocalypse, and you don't get to live through an apocalypse very often, right? So, how often do you get to live through that, right? So this is going to be an incredibly challenging time. But I believe if you're here now listening to this, you knew that at some fundamental level when you came into this existence. You are not going to make it through this decade if you're not growing your own food. It's just bottom line. We just have so much that's collapsing and breaking. Do it not only because a concern of the alternative, which is starvation, no fun there, but because your health. You will be massively healthier. It's a huge upgrade to your health to grow your own food. And it's such a wonderful thing. And the third thing is really, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. Really, before, I was a very, very successful engineer and then a money manager. And I was doing all this crazy stuff. And I would have never thought about, no, I want to buy my way out of this, right? It has been the best thing I've ever done. If you're looking for spirituality and you haven't been getting it by going home and doing deep squats or whatever, yoga, you got to try this. It's the spiritual connection that you've been looking for.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, Marjory. It was such a pleasure connecting with you.
Thanks for having me on, Ari.
Yeah. And for everybody listening, again, you can get her free webinar at theenergyblueprint.com/wildcraft. And Marjory, do you want to tell anybody, people anything else about what they'll learn in that webinar?
Well, basically, we'll go over the outline of how, even if you know nothing, how to grow lots of food in a grid down situation, even if you're older or out of shape. And once you register, I will give you those sign-up bonuses. We have a really funny compost video on how to create compost, and another one on the free chicken feed. I forget what the other ones are, but they're all resources that you're going to want. And in the webinar, we'll go through a quick summary of what's going on globally so you can really get it dialed in. Then we'll go into the solution. And then we have a really, really good Q&A that's very engaging, where everybody is asking the top questions. It's a super empowering webinar. At the end of it, we offer people a bundle that we've really heavily discounted, which includes a copy of the book, as well as, I don't know how to make that happen. as well as a training for a year. It's a whole bundle. You can do this. It's great. Your great-great-grandparents did this, and they didn't have Google. Some of them couldn't even read. They didn't have degrees in genetics or botany or anything. And they grew beautiful, wonderful food. And they also didn't go to the doctor very often. So, and some of them lived more than 100 years.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, my friend. I look forward to connecting with you again.
All righty. Bye, Ari. Bye, everybody.
Hey, this is Ari again. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Just a quick reminder, the new book, my new book, and Alex Leaf's new book, Eat for Energy, comes out on May 10th. So go pre-order that book right now so you can get it delivered to your house on May 10th. It's an incredible book. It's packed with amazing information. You're going to learn strategies to literally double your energy levels in the next 60 days, sleep deeper than you have since you were a kid, improve your gut health, improve your brain health, and so much more. So enjoy the book. Go grab it on Amazon. Write me a review telling me how much it's benefited your life. Go post it on Amazon. And I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will talk to you again soon. The book comes out May 10th, so go grab it right now. And one more thing, if you pre-order the book before May 10th, we're giving away $294 of bonuses for free. These are 2 courses, the Eat for Energy online course and the Sleep and Circadian Rhythm Optimization course. The total value we normally sell them for is $294. We're giving it away for free right now if you pre-order the book. So all you got to do is go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you want, get the book, and then email us the receipt. You can send me an email at ari@theenergyblueprint.com. My team will answer it, and they'll get you all set up with your free bonuses. As if the book was not enough in and of itself, and I assure you it is. It's an incredible book. It's got dozens of nutrition strategies that are going to massively improve your life and that are easy to implement. So go grab the book. I hope you enjoy it. Hey there, this is Ari again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you found it valuable, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, help me get the word out there. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell to get notifications every time we release a new video or new episode of the podcast. And if you're listening to this, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for supporting my work at The Energy Blueprint. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next one.